Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the first Paraspar lecture of 2026, organized by the Office of Communication, Indian Institute of Science. Today, we have a very interesting lecture by Dr. Rajkamal Goswami, who will speak on conservation in Siang Valley. Before we begin, let me give an introduction of the speaker today. Dr. Rajkamal Goswami is a fellow at the Ashoka Trust for Research in Ecology and the Environment. He works at the interface of ecology, social science, and community governance, leading conservation initiative in Arunachal Pradesh that strengthen community-driven conservation outcomes in biodiversity-rich private and community forest and restoration program in the semi-arid Gomalas of Karnataka and Andhra Pradesh, where biochar-linked carbon finance is being leveraged to restore the degraded savanna ecosystems, improve agro-pastoral livelihoods of marginal local communities, and strengthen the rights over the grazing commons. He is also building interdisciplinary monitoring, evaluation, learning, and verification tools to support rigorous and scalable restoration and conservation practice. He has a PhD in conservation science and sustainability from ATRI and Masters in environmental science from Guwahati University. We welcome Dr. Goswami and request him to give his talk.
Hi, I don't know how nervous I look, but I'm very nervous from within because this is my first time talking in the hallowed building of IISc. Like, we have all of us interested in science and research and academics. Probably this is the pinnacle of any achievement, and all of you are so privileged that you are working here or studying here. I was not fortunate enough to get admission. I did try, but I'm so privileged and feel so lucky that I'm among you, and thanks to Pitasta for giving me this opportunity. So this is not going to be a typical science talk, but what I'll be talking about is what I have learned over the last 20 odd years that I have broadly engaged with ecological and conservation research, and now I have maybe about 15-20 years of my active career left, and what I really want to do over this next 15-20 years, my goal is to translate some of this research and learnings into action. And this remarkable place that I'm going to talk about is where most of my action is focused on. Before I start, I just want to acknowledge that a lot of the work and a lot of the things that we are going to talk today are but a result of the wonderful team that I have. Few members of my team are here today, and my lab in ATRI is called Biodiversity Research and Development for Conservation Lab, in short Bird Lab. And before I start talking about Siang Valley also, I would like to mention that the other important site that probably 50% of my time goes is very close to Bangalore. It's in a place called Bagepalli. Bagepalli is largely comprised of semi-arid savanna ecosystem, and a lot of the savanna ecosystem acts as grazing commons for the local communities. And like all savannas, all grasslands, these are highly threatened because of extractive kind of development, because of conversion to different kind of land use, and also because of encroachment for agriculture. So what we are trying to do is, we are trying to restore communities' rights over those land by restoring some of these patches which have been invaded by alien species such as Prosopis juliflora and Lantana camera. And what we are increasingly seeing is that once people gain access, their access to the lands, there is a lot of improvement in the biodiversity, and as well as a lot of like people are more interested in managing these lands themselves. So there is scope for restoring their rights. So this is some interesting work, but maybe that's for the next time. Some important members of my teams are listed here: Ranjit, Seena, and Raju, who are carrying this work. So let's dive straight to this wonderful world called Siang Valley. So what is Siang Valley? What are we talking about here? So Siang is basically what we also know as Brahmaputra. It's the same river which flows in Assam, and it originates in Manasarovar glacier, and then it flows as Sangpo, in Tibet before it enters India, and it assumes the name of Siang. And this is one of the largest rivers of the world, and definitely one of the most populous river basins. So it's and it's not just important for the immense hydrological value that it carries, and the immense amount of land that it enriches, but it's also one of the most important cultural places. And remarkable cultural diversity is just found within the basin of this village of this river. So Siang Valley is particularly the area which encompasses the Siang River in Arunachal Pradesh. It's a large area. It's at almost 18,500 square kilometers. There are multiple large tributaries of Siang River itself which drains this immense river valley. And you can see that there is a great amount of elevational range also, starting from low elevations around 100 meters, goes right up to more than 5,000 meters. And in this valley, what we see is in the foothills, 100 to 200 meters, you'll find this remarkable floodplain grasslands. And these grasslands are maintained largely by fire and by the annual floods that is drained by the river in this area. And also there are large herbivores, both wild like elephants, like local people rear a lot of bithuns and cattle there. So herbivory fire maintains these grasslands as grasslands. And you can see it's actually a savanna, so there are a few trees also. Then in the mid and low elevation hilly areas, you have this beautiful mountain, tropical evergreen and subtropical broadleaf forest. And these kind of forests you can find almost up to the elevation of 2,800 to 900 meters. And once you go higher than around 3,000, 3,500 meters, you start seeing this kind of alpine vegetation, which is some of it is open, some of it is snow covered, some of it is rocky, but you also find a lot of shrubs and rhododendron forest there. Now, Siang Valley is not just beautiful forests, beautiful rivers or grasslands. It's also very, very rich. Okay, before I start talking about people, it's one of the most populous river valleys in Arunachal Pradesh. All of you know Arunachal Pradesh is one of the least densely populated states in India. Do you know what is the density of population in Arunachal? Many of you will know. Roughly around 10, and this is according to the last census, and there might be some changes, but among all the other river valleys, this is one of the most populous, and that's largely because it's also one of the most fertile areas. I'll come back to that. So the local, three large local communities occupy this valley. So Adi communities, Galo communities, these are largely found in the low elevation areas. And Memba and Khamba, which are Tibetan Buddhist communities, these are found in the northern part of Siang Valley, largely above 2,000 meters. Then one of the important parts of the culture in Siang Valley, and this is also not just unique to Siang Valley, this is also unique, this is also common, this culture is shared by a lot of other areas of Eastern Himalayas, not just Indian in Eastern Himalayas, but you'll find this livestock even in Tibet. So this is one of the rare feral livestock. So apart from, so this livestock is just kept for rituals and meat. And most of the meat that is consumed is also during festivals and rituals. There used to be commercial sale of this meat, but it has been banned over the last few years. So right now, the lifestyle of this cattle is very unique because it feeds in the wild, it breeds in the wild, and local communities there use markers, body markers, to identify their animals, and they have very unique system of using salts to kind of connect with this livestock. But overall, Atri has actually made a very beautiful movie about how this animal, which is very, very important for weddings and all, what is the process of just going, finding this animal among the vast mountains that you have seen, bringing back to the village and then sacrificing it and then going ahead with the wedding. So, and another very important thing to remember is that you can't maintain this kind of livestock system without the immense forest that I showed in one of the pictures, because you can't really stall, feed or keep these animals in stalls. These are feral by habit. Very important part of the landscape there. And then another unique part of Siang Valley is the extensive irrigated paddy cultivation that happens. Now, when you think about mountains of Northeast, you'll usually imagine shifting cultivation, slash and burn, jhoom, but there are few pockets in Arunachal. So sorry. Yeah, so there are few pockets in Arunachal, including Zero Valley, where you see some irrigated agriculture, but the difference between Zero and Siang Valley is that here, throughout the length of the river, in the low-lying areas, you will see a lot of irrigated agriculture. Sorry. Yeah. And then apart from the wet rice cultivation or the irrigated agriculture that takes place, people also cultivate a lot of millets. So earlier millet used to be important part of the diet, but now it's mostly used for making local brew, which is called as kala apong. And apart from that, there is a lot of fruit cultivation. I'm just showing my favorite fruit, which is pineapple. I don't know, like if people are there from Northeast and people might think, oh, Meghalaya pineapples are really the best, but that's because you haven't tried pineapples from Siang Valley. I can vouch that that is the tastiest and the juiciest pineapple that I've ever eaten. Then the diet is not just about rice and millets and all. People also, I mean, in places like Yosing, where we are working, Yosing is a remote village located south of one large national park called Moling. Their roads haven't reached there, and you have to trek about 2 to 3 hours to reach that village. And there, I would say, apart from the rice that they grow, all the most other meat and vegetables come from the forest. So there is a lot of use of wild bioresources. And when I say wild bioresources, I really mean uncultivated parts of biodiversity which have direct use value for human beings. Now, all of you will imagine it's wild, it's bioresources, it should come from forest. But let me also mention that about 30 to 40% of the species, particularly the plant species, which people consume, actually occurs in the fallows of the agriculture as well as the periphery of their homestead. And because there is no clear distinction between where people stay and the forest, there is a lot of semi-wild spaces where many of these wild species are found, which people also consume. And around the life also moves a lot of festivals, and festivals are largely centered around harvest and the agrarian kind of calendar or lifestyle that they have. So this is picture from one of the villages where we are working. It's called Simong village, and this is Aran festival. And during this, lot of ritualistic hunting, lot of dances, and lot of brew is consumed. So all of this that I have shown, including how they manage to do wet rice cultivation, how they gather wild bioresources, how they cultivate the fruits and the millets and all, how they brew the wine from it, is all very, very deeply embedded in the knowledge system that they have produced over generations through interactions with the landscape and the forest. Just we have to keep that in mind. Now, in the backdrop of this, our engagement, how did A-Tree's engagement start in Siang Valley? So when the colonial rule was in India, I don't know how many of you know, but Northeast was one of the last areas where the British armies actually reached, and direct rule started happening there. So one of the policies that the British had was to govern through some kind of agreement with the village headmen, and Siang Valley was no exception. I mean, in those times, because of the huge river splitting the valley into two, East Bank, West Bank, only those parts where British were there, the nearest outpost was in Assam called Sadia. And it was only areas which they could navigate by boat, they could reach and contact the headmen. So most of the British people who had managed to reach was in the lower parts of, or the southern parts of Siang Valley. Now the interesting thing is that apart from trying to control the territory or the land, the British people were also very explorers by nature, right? And Brahmaputra was one of the last rivers to have been navigated or totally understood, whether it's the same river which flows in Tibet and then comes down to India. And Siang Valley was also very important for that particular reason, because they really wanted to understand and solve that riddle. And because Adi people are so they are very independent, they are very very proud people. So they were among the last communities which bowed down before the British. And what happened? So there is a famous book. It's called In Abor Jungles, and it's about a narration of that particular incident which happened in Abor Hills. So Siang Valley was called Abor Hills, as was many parts of Dafla Hills for the Subansiri and the Papumpare area that we know today. And where Dibang Valley flows, it used to be called as Mishmi Hill. So by the name of the community, they used to call these hills. So in Abor Hills, there was this British officer, when he wanted to have a meeting with one of the headmen to explore further areas. There was some confrontation, and Adi being the proud and independent people that they have, they immediately confronted the British officer, and in the tussle, the British officer got killed. And after that, there was a huge retaliatory kind of ambush by the British forces. They brought in large amount of forces from Nagaland, particularly the Naga regiment, which they had built up by then. And during that military expedition, countless villages were burnt, many people were killed. But British being British, along with that, they also took scientists with them. So while the army were plundering, looting, maiming the people out there, the scientists collected biological samples, they drew maps, they charted the course of the river, and they produced these remarkable volumes, which is of great importance to people who are interested in biodiversity of that region. Now this map that you see in the, so it will be like my right. So this is the map which the British had made during that expedition. And this is the map that we made because we wanted to also follow the same trail what the British had taken about 100 odd years back. And we wanted to do it in 2020, but because of COVID, it got delayed, and ultimately we could go to the, we could proceed with the project only in 2022. So that was the way A-Tree's work started in the Siang Valley. And this is the team. It was a very big team from multiple institutions. And it was funded by National Geographic. So we have also collaborated with Felis largely on this, who is also producing a feature-length documentary on it. So A-Tree's role in this project was largely to go and document biodiversity and try to understand whether there has been any significant loss or change in the biodiversity, because we had these remarkable documents that I showed, which was produced more than 100 years back, and that document became some kind of a baseline for us to understand what changes have happened, particularly in the biodiversity. Apart from like all these remarkable discoveries that happened, many new species. I mean, I can't even put a precise number to it right now, but I've given some numbers and they have changed. So this slide was made about 6 months back. And since then, I think there has been a few update to this list. But what is important to note that there were many remarkable discoveries which were new to science across multiple taxa. And one of the AAAI's works extensively on land snails and freshwater snails. So a lot of the discoveries were around land snails and freshwater snails. And during this time, very interestingly, about 30 species of these snails were found to be eaten by the communities there. So these were already known to people, many which were being new for science. Already people knew where to find them, knew their habitat, knew the season when they occurred, and they were actually going and consuming them also. So a lot of these samples were actually collected from markets. And then these are some of the remarkable, like highly magnified images taken using microscope photography of parasitic wasp. I mean, in the naked eye, it looks like the head of a pin. Yeah, so we have, so in 2022 and early parts of 23, we were doing this largely focusing on inventory of bioresources, and we were also trying to understand how the valley has changed. And so my part in that project was to really map how this landscape has changed over the years. And when I say landscape, I really don't mean just the geographical or the biodiversity or the abiotic part of the landscape, but I was also interested in how the cultural landscape was changing, because a lot of the changes that we see in the landscape around us is driven a lot by our culture and the way culture evolves. So what we saw was that over a period of around 35 years, I mean, we couldn't go back to 100 years, but 35 years gave us very good idea that the valley, apart from a few pockets in the southern parts and around the places where a lot of the large settlements were concentrated, we didn't see much loss or like eradication of forest per se, but what we clearly saw was change in the structure or some kind of thinning of the forest happening in large areas. And that's why you can see that what we really saw was that about 129,000 hectares of what used to be intact or very dense forest became open forest or moderately dense forest. So some kind of change in the forest cover was happening, although we didn't see remarkable loss of forest per se. And so when I was talking with a lot of the old people, like people who were, so my criteria was that I'll choose to talk to the oldest people in the village, and mostly the median age was around 70 years, and I could speak to people who were almost 90 years, who were still sane and who could still talk clearly. And what we understood was that a lot of the changes that has happened only in the last 10 years. So I was talking to them largely around 2022 in the months between May and October. So the changes happened between say 2010 and then. And these changes are not like that some big industry came or some big changes. It's just basic infrastructure. So what they were telling that earlier the nearest town, they had to walk for 3 days, 4 days. Now roads have reached. So for the very first time in their lives, they are actually experiencing what it feels to actually travel from their village to the nearest market or nearest town by road, which was quite poignant. I mean, at least as far as I understood and felt that time. And what I'm going to show you that, so one of the remarkable or most important changes that has happened is the increase in the road networks. Now, road network in itself really doesn't change a lot of space. Like roads are what, 5 to 10 to 15 meters wide. So, but I'll show you, because of the way our structures or the institutions or the regulation around most of the infrastructure development works in India, what happens when we start building roads. So this is a village, like a screen capture of a village. It was actually shared as a Facebook post by one of my very good friends who did his PhD from Siang Valley. His name is Karthik. And you see this is the village where he did his PhD, and this is the Siang River, which takes a nice bend there. So this is the graph from Google Earth from 2021, and you can see a single lane highway passing from there. And then the road expansion started. And now this was actually taken in 2025, and what you really see is how the road fragments the forest. So it's not just the thin strip that is being widened or cleared for making the road, it also disrupts a lot of streams. It actually washes away a lot of downstream forest, particularly because dumping is totally unregulated, plus a lot of ancillary development happens. So this is something which has really started happening in a big way in that region. And then with roads, better access to market, what also happens is what we are seeing here. A lot of extraction. So from agrarian, it shifts to some kind of extractive economy. So you have a lot of like mining for different kind of minerals. You have logging just intensifies. Earlier, probably people were able to move 3-4 logs in a day. Now they are moving 3-4 trucks in a day. So you can imagine the increase in the intensity. Then movement of other resources like cane from the forest. And of course, we all know about the dams which are on the pipeline. So if the Siang dam comes into fulfillment, then it will be probably the largest dam in the country. And for a river like Siang, and which also becomes Brahmaputra, you can imagine the kind of implications that will have in terms of environment and hydrology in that region. Apart from all these geographical and landscape level changes, there were a lot of cultural and economic kind of changes going on. So this is actually one of the research projects that one of my master's student carried out, who was doing his master's from IISc. And our main question for that particular project was to understand where are the unclassed forests. So in Siang Valley, about 50% of the forests are classified as unclassed forests. For those of you who are not really well versed with the terminologies of different types of forest, recorded forest in the country. So in India, we have broadly 3 types of forest. One is the protected area. Then one is the reserve forest, which are not protected, but reserved for earlier for extractive use. But now it's almost akin to a protected area because no other use is allowed. And then we have the unclassed forests, which are not recorded as officially as reserve forest or protected forest, but they are still recorded as forest, and they are in the records as in the records of the Forest Department or the Forest Survey of India. So when we started designing this study, we went around going village by village in Siang Valley, asking which are the lands which are unclassed forests within the village. And the way we started looking at it was to ask which are the areas which no one claims to be belonging to either the community or an individual. And what we found was that forget about unclassed forests, which no one has any claims to legally speaking. There were hardly any common land or common forests left. Now, Northeast is interesting because when people talk about land, we look at it as forest. But in Northeast, there is not, particularly in the hilly region, there is no real distinction between land and forest, because forest cover is the most dominant type of land cover that you will see there. So when we go and talk to people and we ask about forest, they will talk that this is my land, or that is his land, or that is my brother's land. So like that, when we started surveying the area to understand how people or how land was distributed among the government and the community, we found that we couldn't find any unclassed forest, because all the land that was there around a village was claimed by mostly at individual level actually. So what this research clearly showed was that land is now increasingly becoming privatized. It's also becoming some kind of a commodity, just like anywhere else. And what was earlier, so earlier only the area where they did the wet rice cultivation used to be privately owned, and all the other places from where they used to collect their bioresources or hunt used to be some kind of de facto commons. But now, because of the way land is seen as a commodity, and because of the expansion of the road, because of emergence of many cash crops, people are claiming that these land are private, and they're actually restricting access to other people to enter these lands. Then the other student who also worked in Siang Valley looked at this just very simple question, that once this kind of development starts, what really happens to the knowledge and the use and trade of bioresources. So what this research clearly showed is that, so we used access to roads or access or remoteness as a proxy for bioresource. Because even if a village might be, say, around 300 kilometers from Bangalore, for example, but the road connectivity is very good, you have all the access to the development parameters that we look at, say health, say schools, say education, or if you want to travel for any opportunity outside your village. But if there is no road access, then that place is truly remote. So we wanted to use road as an important proxy. So for us, the remote villages were those where no roads had reached, and we also looked at semi-developed and developed, which are really those big towns where markets existed. And what we clearly saw is that our hypothesis was that there will be a lot of reduction as areas got developed in terms of the way people consume bioresources, the number of species that people consumed from the wild, and the number of species that were traded. But our hypothesis was completely rejected, and what we found was that development really didn't have much impact on bioresource consumption in terms of the number of species that people ate. But what changed was that people lost knowledge, and that knowledge was being now used to trade these goods through markets of those towns. So in any typical market in Siang Valley or in Arunachal, it's very common to see huge amount of wild bioresources being traded. And this trade is actually supplied by many of the remote villages. So now even the remote villages, and what used to be consumed by 20 households earlier, now it is being consumed by like God knows how many households. Say whole of Itanagar town is consuming bioresources which are coming from, say, remote Siang Valley village. Or for that matter, people sitting in Pasighat, which is the biggest town and which was supposed to be the capital of Arunachal. It's a big market, so a lot of people come in that market. So they are also actually now have access to forest and villages which are quite far from Pasighat town itself. So what these kind of changes are doing is that many of these things is not very apparent, but through markets, through roads, a lot of these cultures, a lot of the practices which people had, which kind of regulated the use and loss of the systems, or prevented its loss rather, are getting severely eroded. So this is just one 60-year-old man from Sisson, which was a remote village, was telling that we never ate wild cats before. Of course, he was talking in Hindi. And in older times, it was believed that consuming wild cats would make one go mad. But the younger generation eat that is in the wild cats, but not only that, snakes and wild dogs too, which were not really allowed as per their cultural norms earlier. And what you can see, the hide of the cat there is actually a marble cat, which is a threatened species. Now, given this backdrop of the expedition, this is what we decided to do from 2023 onwards, that we move beyond just exploration or documenting change for its own sake, but start designing some kind of conservation action around what we really wanted to do, which is to basically describe unknown biodiversity, but also conserve the habitat so that there is more opportunity for biodiversity to thrive. So, I mean, this is boring. I mean, I'm not going to go about it, but typically what we do when we start designing an intervention is try to really pinpoint what problems we are going to address and what are going to be our main strategies. So, what you can see, the problems are actually in the lower part of the main problem statement, the main drivers, and the drivers are listed as proximate, which proximate causes are basically those which you see in the site. Like for example, if logging is happening, you can see people logging the trees. Whereas if you see oil palm growing there, you really don't see the actual cause of oil palm, why it is grown, because consumers are somewhere else. People are not really consuming oil palm there. So, and the kind of consequences that these kind of drivers and threats it has. So what we understood that there were a lot of consequences that we are seeing broadly in terms of culture and biodiversity. And if we can address those 4 which are highlighted in green, we can actually address more than 95% of the problems that we see in that area today. So I'm going to skip this because I've covered this in my talk so far. But this is the theory of change statement that we started working towards, and that is to build resilient socio-ecological landscape by averting loss of biodiversity and bioresources, because what we clearly saw that there are a lot of ways through which biodiversity and bioresources are getting lost, and that has huge impact on the social and the cultural life of people as well as their economic dependency on forest. And we wanted to do this mainly by strengthening those local practices and institutions which favor judicious or like well-regulated use of biodiversity and bioresources. And this can only happen if you improve the rights and the rights of the communities who are still practicing this kind of judicious use. And so this is the broader strategy that we started working out in Siang, and that we focus not just on community forests but also the protected areas, because many of the protected areas, so Moling National Park is one of the, I would say, the least explored protected areas. Just to reach the boundary, you have to trek anywhere between 2 to 3 days just to reach the boundary of that park. It's so remote, and therefore hardly any inventory work has happened there. And we had a kind of framework to also identify or prioritize areas which we wanted to conserve, because we have limited resource, limited manpower. So what did we do? So most conservation prioritization frameworks will largely look at the distribution of species across a certain area and focus largely on those areas which is the richest in terms of species, distribution. I mean, that's why you have biodiversity hotspots and you have all kind of different measurements. Because that's where you want to focus most of your conservation resources in. But what we really understood when we started working in that landscape is that you just can't go and start protecting biodiversity because 95% of the area is under the direct control of the communities. And communities use these are important cultural landscape. They also have different values associated with this forest. So we really have to work along with those values, and therefore any kind of intervention that we do, it can't be driven by where these species are, but where are the opportunities, where are local community partners available who are interested to or who understands the importance of biodiversity conservation. So we had a kind of social ecological prioritization model where we looked at different kind of enablers and different kind of barriers. So all the things that you see in the gray box are basically some kind of enablers, and the variables that you see outside the green box are different kind of barriers, and these barriers are classified into environmental, social, economic, and different kind of variables. And based on this, one of our first intervention was to actually go and start making inroads into the Moling National Park. And the idea was also that because there is a lot of conflict between the forest department and the local communities, again, like goes back to the way these parks were like declared as parks without any consultation with the local community. The kind of struggles or the problems that we are seeing in Nagarhole is precisely emerging from the same issues. So we also wanted to assert some of the community's rights over even in this area. So we started developing a co-management model where people have more rights and access to this forest, but they also help in, not for extractive reason, but for management and conservation reasons. So we held a lot of trainings with forest department, with local communities, and then we also started doing a lot of exploration with those areas. And all of what you see are actually done by the local youths from Siang Valley. And this is just a few images from the first round of camera trapping that we did. And what we found was, even though the narrative was that, even it came out during the expedition that we were going, a lot of people were there from different parts of the country. And one of the emerging narratives was that, oh, we hardly see any birds, we hardly see any large mammals, so everything is being eaten and everything has been hunted out. But once we started doing this exploration, we saw that no, a lot of large mammals, including birds, also survived. And then we also went and shared these results with the communities who helped us in going and monitoring these areas. And through these discussions, actually, a lot of the action plan that we devised started taking shape. So we started meeting with a lot of multiple village bodies. That was the main institution that we were going through. We started mapping some of the sites which had the high feasibility of being declared as CCAs. CCAs is actually community conserved areas, one of the most viable and most ethical kind of conservation intervention that you can do, areas where people still have a lot of rights, lot of values, and lot of dependency on forest. And then what we do, we also have meetings with partners, and then if there is a lot of agreement in terms of what we really want to do, if there is a lot of alignment, if there is a lot of overlaps in our goals, we start drafting some kind of resolution or preparing a strategy around how we want to protect that land or protect the biodiversity there. And embedded within that is also a lot of capacity building. Now just some picture of how we did this process when we were working in the southern part of Moling National Park in the village called Yosing, which I had spoken about. Yeah, this is one of the sites that we have identified, and we are in the process of getting it declared as a CCA. That's going to be a 1,000 hectare. And between this forest and Moling, there is very beautiful intact forest. Yeah, this just shows the sites where we have been able to reach and monitor. So I'll just show here, like all these areas, the roads just pass through here. So lot of trekking and walking happens in this kind of landscapes. Yeah, just going to show these slides with different pictures, and so this graph basically shows the difference in what we call as the relative capture frequency of pictures that are trapped by camera traps across Moling and the areas outside Moling. And what we can clearly see is that because of the large area, because of relatively less access, we still have a lot of high mammal frequencies inside the national park compared to outside. And then we also started documenting birds in these areas. And we started documenting the different kind of biological and climatic variables in this forest, just to understand the underlying differences in these habitats. And this is some sort of some of the preliminary results that we have got. And what we see is that clearly the CCA sites compared to what we call as control are basically sites where which are closer to the villages where people still go for extraction, and that's why they don't want to allow these areas to be protected, have relatively low value in terms of species richness of birds. And another remarkable thing which happened is that during just one season of sampling, we also described 6 new butterfly species, not new to science but new to India. And one of them, which is the first one, the Litinonyx, it's such a beautiful species. This is the nearest known distribution of this species is from actually Vietnam. And so we are doing all these things in the last 2.5 years now. Do we keep doing this in site after site? We replicate Siang to other site, or what is our scaling strategy? 1,000 hectares or 2,000 hectares here and there, what big difference it's going to make? So we have got some scaling strategies in our mind, and one of them is to basically look at the youths of the region. And so I keep telling my parents that your generation was hopeless, my generation is even more hopeless. But what I really find hope is in the Gen Z, what we call as the Gen Z. And why I find a lot of hope is because my niece, who is just 21 years old, has turned a vegan because of environmental reason. And at least 3 members in my lab, all of them are very, very young people. All of them are vegan, and they keep berating me because I am big time into meat. So I'm just seeing that there is a lot of positive thinking and energy among the generation of today. And this is exactly what we are seeing in Arunachal. Arunachal is at different level. When we go and interact with the youths there, the kind of thinking and the kind of concern that they have for the nature there is something which is remarkable, and that is what gives us a lot of inspiration and hope also to work ahead. And that is what we are going to focus on going ahead, so we have, for example, started a training program for youths who want to do some kind of conservation work, be it cultural conservation, be it species conservation, or just some kind of cultural artifacts or biodiversity or species that they want to protect, and give them some kind of support, both in terms of small grants, training, and so on and so forth. Anything which enables them to do conservation work in their respective villages and community areas. And these are some of the pictures that, so tech is a big pull for the youth, for the Gen Z. So we use a lot of tech tools in our training, like we have shown, like drones and different weather monitors, passive acoustic monitoring devices. And then we also give them to use these devices in their respective villages and forest. And some of the entry point activities that we do, particularly to get the youths interested in biodiversity, is through leveraging some of the global and the regional events like GBBC, which is Global Backyard Bird Count, which happens every year. And we have launched multiple initiatives like this Feathers and Footsteps, which was the first kind of bird walk which happened in that region. And apart from that, because of the presence of A-tree in that landscape, there were few people, very senior people, who were known to be very pro-conservation right from a very long time. And I'll just talk about 2 of those people. One of them is called Sri Ipra Mekola. Recently, Roundglass Sustain made a beautiful movie on him because he's someone who rears a lot of mithun and a lot of cattle in his grasslands. He has a huge amount of private grassland. And in that grassland, he has been seeing, monitoring and conserving Bengal florican, which is one of the most threatened birds in the world today, for a long time. And among the populations that are found of this particular species globally, one very important breeding population is in his grassland actually. So fortunately, he was very willing to partner with us because he wants to now, he's getting old, his health is not in a great shape, so he wants to really do something with the forest institutionalize it into some kind of to conserve the biodiversity there. So when he approached us, we felt very privileged, and we started working in this area, which you see in that side of this screen, which is called the Mekola in the lower Dibang Valley. And the other person that I'm talking about, his name is D.K. Thongon. He is a Sherdukpan. He belongs to the Sherdukpan tribe. He's from West Kameng. He's a resident of this place called Rupa, which is just north of Eagle Nest. And he had played a very important part in the declaration of the Eagle's Nest also, although it's not quite well known or documented. And he's part of the family from where the first chief minister of Arunachal had come. So with him, we are trying to declare the areas north and south of Eagle Nest as CCS. So what are some of the communities that we are applying in these 3 sites is that all of the CCAs are complementary to existing protected areas. So even though we are looking at small areas like say 1,000 hectares south of Moling, or around 4,000 hectares north of Mehao Wildlife Sanctuary in Lower Dibang Valley, or around say 3,000 hectares north and south of Eagle Nest Wildlife Sanctuary, which are basically Sherdukpan Community Forest. In complement, it is very complementary to the existing PA, and therefore the net area which gets protected becomes quite large. And all of us who know about landscape theory knows that large sites will always have more biodiversity compared to smaller sites. So I'm just going to share 2 videos. So this actually is from the Kameng site I spoke about, the Sherdukpan. So this is just an elephant. This is very close to this place called Khelong. And this is a place where Dalai Lama, when he was actually escaping from Tibet, he had taken, this is the old route which connected Tawang to the Brahmaputra Valley in Tejpur. And he had used that road and had planted a tree there. And this is also part of the old like biocultural landscape that Sherdukpan has been using for more than 100 years now. So this is one of the camera trap pictures from there. And this is actually from Dibang. This is from the CCA that I was talking about. This is almost like the private land of Sri Pra Ecology. And this is at an elevation of almost 3,000 meters. You can see the temperature at around 2 p.m. It's around 7 degrees. So earlier what people used to think that, oh, if it's community forest, if it's forest which is used by people for cultivation, for extracting bioresources or for extracting timber, you can't really coexist with large wildlife. What I've shown you is just 2 sites where we are currently working, and there are multiple sites like this where people have been coexisting with this largest herbivore, terrestrial herbivore or terrestrial mammal in fact, and the largest known carnivore in the world. And they have been coexisting with these 2 remarkable species for many generations in the same landscape. So we have to let go of the notion that when we are talking about community-based conservation, it has got to do only with plants or habitat. Just revisiting this picture which we took before start of the expedition funded by NGS. And I'm just sharing this picture just to show how far we have come, because here most of the team members are indigenous, are from the local communities. Whereas if you go back to this picture, we hardly see any. So there the local communities were more enablers who were just helping us carry out the expedition. We all know that all these species that we discovered were done or carried out on the backs of the local community's knowledge there, but they emerge as footnotes in our acknowledgement. So what we are trying to do now is to bring in the forefront what people have already conserved for generations, and now with some support, we just want to empower these processes, these cultures, these traditions, this kind of remarkable vision that few individuals among the community have. And that's all I have for you. Thank you. This is my team who is working there. So while people think about questions, I'll just keep naming my team members. So you can start with, you have Dorji there, we have Abika, Monsoon, then Pema, and then Molom, and then Chering, then Paul. Paul sits in Bangalore, he made those maps that I showed. Then you have Mesa, then you have Anushka, then you have Chipra, then you have, what was her name? Prachaya, Rajkamal, then Rohan, Senan, and Prita.
Thank you. Very nice talk. I wanted some elaboration on two aspects you said, that post-development in certain areas, landscape privatization increased. This is one. Also, I was curious about the part when you mentioned that in your interview with Middle East people, old people, they said that they're claiming that younger generation are more are trying out more unconventional meat source. So, was that thing anecdotal, means inferences coming from few interviewees, or is it something like it's a fact there that this is happening and has been found in many youths in that place? So these two aspects.
Yeah. So the first question was around the development, the changes that is happening.
Privatization of.
So
like how I'm finding it much more difficult to understand that you're saying post-development privatization increased.
So okay. So what in Siang Valley, what we have seen, what are the processes of that privatization is what you want to ask, right? So in Siang Valley, they used to have this place called they used to call as the areas where they used to go and put rat traps. So rodent hunting is a very important part of Adi culture. And the Aran festival that I showed you, so rodents are a very important part of the ritual of that festival. And if you look at the system that evolved, because it's agrarian, people used to cultivate a lot of grains within what was largely forest, controlling rodent population. To be able to hunt small to large rodents takes a lot of skills. And the old Adi people, what used to do, they used to go and put specific type of traps in different kind of forest, in far off areas. So I'll just go back to that slide, just to show you those hunting areas. Yeah. So do you see those areas which are called as Morang or Edas? These areas? So Morang and Edas are nothing but areas where their forefathers used to go and put those traps. And traps were so if I am putting trap, you can't take those rats from my traps. So that was part of the cultural norm there. Over time, what has happened, that it's not just the trap, but the area where my grandfather put trap, that is my area, because my grandfather went there, first explored there, first put traps. So now I am claiming that land to be mine, because my grandfather first went and put those traps. So traps became some kind of a marker of ownership over that land. And the ownership is traced through the use of that land for trapping or hunting animals. That is the mechanism through which people are claiming that that land is mine, that land is his. And there is a kind of customary understanding. So in Northeast Hills, in very few regions, you'll find any cadastral maps. So these are all through shared knowledge and common understanding, and the customary institutions that govern this village and their affairs are mostly validated through. So that is the process of privatization that is happening now. And because land 20, 30 years back, before roads came, before markets percolated, land didn't have much value, apart from, say, only going and hunting. Today, because of roads, tourism increase, then increase in cash crop, it matters how much land you have, where you have those land. So therefore, people's claim over this land is increasingly becoming institutionalized. The other important aspect which I didn't mention in my talk is also this large infrastructure development like dams, roads. So here, government gives compensation, right, under the Land Acquisition Act. So if you don't have any land, how will you file for compensation? So compensation has emerged as a parallel economy now, because of which people are also preparing what is called as the land possession certificate, LPCs there. So LPCs are now seen as further instruments of privatization, where people who have money and capital are also going and buying lands. Say this person in remote village in Yosing, he has around 20 hectares of land. For him, that land is not of much value apart from the animals that he hunts. Now, tomorrow if someone from Itanagar or Pasighat who has access to capital goes and tells him that I'll pay you, say, 5 lakh rupees. It's a huge amount of money for him. And he will happily sell that land. But that 5 lakh of the vote that he paid for that land is probably worth many crores. And that time will immediately come once the roads reach that village, which is going to happen very soon, right? That is the mechanism of privatization. The second question is around, so that was just one quotation I used from one interview, but that is something we saw across almost all the interviews that we did. That this shifting or erosion of cultures and tradition. So one of the things that elders were repeatedly telling was that because people don't have knowledge anymore, knowledge of their own culture, knowledge of their tradition, so it's not like about breaking rules, it's about really don't know or really being unaware about what to do or what not to do. There's hardly any, the way life itself is evolving today, most of the kids are studying in towns or the nearest schools. So there has been a lot of transition itself in the way knowledge used to transmit in that landscape. I'm talking about the cultural knowledge which is not written, which is all oral and customary. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Thanks.
It will be very nice if you just introduce yourself also and what you are doing. Yeah.
So my name is Abhijit. I am from Assam, but I'm working in NIAS currently. Thank you for this beautiful presentation, and I can see a lot of known faces here like Mansunda and all.
Oh, you know Mansunda.
Yeah. So my question is related to the, you're talking about the cultural landscape changes and all. So it is about the cultural extinction of a particular species or particular bioresources. Like the extraction is, increasing after development and all. So, and then again, the city people, or you told like that people who are living in town are getting the extracted resources from the villages. And then again, if we see at the very landscape, the resources, like it is decreasing. So will it be kind of affecting the knowledge base of the local people, specifically for the future generation? And again, it came from one of your slides that, the people have already mentioned that, there are very few large mammal or large animals we can see, but you got lot of animals like large mammals in the camera traps records and other surveys. So will it be kind of like, is it happening currently, like the biological or social extinction of these species or the bioresources? Is it happening currently there? Like what is your observation on that? And the second is about this thing, what is it called? Community conserved areas. So do we have a kind of a database or like, platform where we can get information about the community conserved areas from Northeast or from like any part of the country, like the protected area network we have for wildlife sanctuaries and national park, etc. So these were two of my questions.
Yeah. So the first question is about. So one is perception, one is narrative. So when we started the expedition, and even when like I don't know if you know Rohini Nilekani, like she is the one who runs the Rohini Nilekani Philanthropies and also is an important shareholder in Infosys. So she visited our landscape about 2 years back. No, 1 year back actually. Last year she was there. And she also thought that it's like empty, you can't see any birds. And she was very reluctant to come there because she's very interested in birds. And one of the main reasons why she wanted to travel was because of birds. And then, but when she went there and when we started showing her the birds, because we have been doing a lot of exploration there, she was surprised. So what we see is in areas particularly where there is a lot of hunting or a lot of pressures, species tend to be more shy, or individuals of species tend to be more shy than areas. Say if you go to Gujarat or Rajasthan, you can approach birds much closer than in Assam. I mean, Assam is better compared to say Arunachal or Meghalaya. But you cross the Meghalaya border and you see a difference in the same bird, like Maina and all, you won't see. Even in what you see in paddy fields, in main roads, right? Monkeys also, for example. So one is, there is certainly lower abundance as I have compared PA and non-PA. But it's, we really didn't document any extinction of species. I mean, one species which was thought to be extinct, a very important tree which is called shinkeng. Shinkeng is basically, so shinkeng is, it's a very range restricted dipterocarp species, very important timber species which is found in a very small part of the lower part of Siang Valley. And if you look at the IUCN Red List database, even today it's known as extinct. But we found people are growing, people are using that tree, and it's called shinkeng because shing means like dao, and keng means iron. So when you hit that tree with dao, no, with which they used to chop wood, it used to clang like iron. It's so tough. And if you use that tree to build pillars in your house, it will last for more than 200 years, 300 years. It's just very hard wood. So we found that tree happily growing there. So officially, we didn't document any species getting extinct, but of course, because of hunting, because of extraction, relatively we'll see low abundance in certain areas, but doesn't mean that they have lost a lot of biodiversity.
Yeah, so my point was actually like social extinction of a species, like from the memory of the younger generation.
No, I mean younger generation either they know or they don't know, but I mean socially they didn't become extinct. So there are people who already know about this species and all. Yeah. And you had a second question. Sorry, can you just?
Yes, it is about the community conserved areas. Like
database. Yeah. So there is a organization called Kalpavriksh. So they are one of the coordinators of this community conserved area consortium. There is a CCA consortium, and they maintain a database. So if you write to me an email, I can happily share the link with you, where all the database of CCAs, not only in India but around the world, can be found. Yeah.
Yeah. So as you have mentioned in the presentation that Gen Z there has extreme level of thinking when it comes to conservation. So you can assume that I also have a similar kind of mindset.
Yeah.
So my question was really amongst the challenges that you have to face when you were partnering with the local communities in order to move forward your initiatives of the conservation of the species or bioresources. So you have also mentioned that most of the land has been owned by the individuals. So earlier they were classified as forest areas, which were unclassified forest areas, but you found out that it was individually owned. So what were the issues mainly that you can reflect upon, so we can maybe introspect upon it?
Yeah. So why is, for example, commonly owned land or common resources or common like commons are more resilient than private land? I mean, if I ask, so you might know about Hardin's theory about the tragedy of commons, which was written in early 60s and all. And there the prevalent notion was that if there is privatization, there will be degradation of commons or the resources around commons. And then Ostrom came and completely dismantled that whole theory about whether privatization is good or sharing resources in a judicious way is good. And what we are seeing today, like if you look at the globe at a large scale and within the country at local scale, where is the most damaging environmental problem and depletion of biodiversity happening? Is it happening in these areas where people still share resources, or is it happening in areas where there is increasing privatization? Can you tell me, like, quickly, like, what do you think? Anyone can shout. I mean, you don't have to use a mic.
Mostly, I think privatization.
Exactly. So we don't need more evidence to show that privatization is harmful for biodiversity. Is a shared resource. We all have to share. If you privatize bioresource, it becomes zoo. They become pets. So you can't have wilderness in private spaces. Look at Delhi. Look at cities like Bangalore or any other place. Like, what is happening where privatization, neoliberal kind of consumption is the norm. So, I mean, we have seen, we know all these things. So do we really want to go that way, or do we want to hold on to some of these things which are still there and try to protect those very important values which enable biodiversity to thrive?
Basically protecting the values.
Exactly. So any kind of values, any kind of system which allows you to share space, share resources is always better than privatizing.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Hi, I'm Sonali. I'm a fourth year PhD student at Center for Ecological Sciences. So as you mentioned that there are lots of road development going around Siang Valley. So this, like, my question is ki when you go and talk to people about conservation, and roads are also making their life easier. As you mentioned that before they used to take 3-4 days, now they are reaching maybe in hours. So when you go and tell them ki this road which is making your life easier is also a threat for conservation, or is also making like habitat fragmentation, and also like how are you dealing with this kind of situation where people are also getting benefited from the damage caused to the biodiversity?
No, don't go and tell them. We are not preachy individuals. We will go and tell, oh, roads are harming, so don't take roads. We all need roads to travel. And like I told, if you look at it from the social justice point of view, everyone needs access to road. The problem is not the roads. The problem is the way our regulatory bodies function or are not functioning. Like, there are specific norms about how you should dump the debris that is emerging from the construction or the excavation of mountains due to road widening. Those are not followed. So our focus is to make those institutions and regulatory bodies accountable so that they do their job properly. We are not going to tell people that, oh, why you are supporting roads because roads are going to... No, roads are very important. But I'm telling we have enough rules and norms to make this in a very safe, environmentally least damaging way. Are we doing that? So that is where our focus is largely towards, not really going and talking to people about this. No.
Yeah, thank you.
It's about it was nice talk, and happy to see the works.
Thank you.
I am Ashfaq. I am from Department of Management Studies. I work largely on health, last mile delivery of health supplies, especially in the flood area. And so here I would like to see that in the initial stages of your activity, how was the funding and how was it gathered, and how is it sustaining your activity? Some light on that.
Yeah,
That will be helpful.
And you have one question. You can quickly add. That's a very short one.
Hi, I'm Pranav from CES.
Yeah.
So
I know you.
We had met
in Kelong.
Doimara. Yes,
Kelong and
Kelong.
Doimara both. Yeah,
Yes.
correct. Yeah.
It was really inspiring to hear about your work. So a question I had is, you had mentioned that forests as such have not like declined, but forest cover has declined. So is that? I wanted to ask.
No, not forest cover. I'm talking about the density of forest.
density.
So it's thinning out.
Oh, okay, so is that because of selective logging?
Logging, particularly for timber, and also some kind of harvesting for different kind of resources.
Oh, okay.
So that's what I was saying. It's not really loss of forest. Is some kind of, I don't want to use the term degradation also, because it's a very socially loaded word. So I was just trying to hint that changes in the forest structure, density is happening.
Right. But so also you said that certain. So I wanted to ask: is there any scope for restoration in?
Absolutely. Yeah. In the hilly areas, so the most potent way of restoring will be to just protect the habitat and ensure that these processes take over, and maybe do very restricted amount of planting. But in grasslands is where we see real problems. where a lot of invasive herbs are coming up. And also because of the lack of understanding around how grassland should be managed, is somewhere where really we want to start doing some restoration activities now. Thanks. And your Ashfaq, your question. We have been fortunate to be like, I would not say generous or adequate, but we have been able to, raise the funds that we need to carry out the activities to sustain that big team, get all the equipments, conduct the trainings. And thanks. I did acknowledge them in my last slide, but Global Conservation, Sargocap Foundation, Royal Enfield, apart from all the support that A3 gives as an institution, has been very, very crucial in carrying out all this work and activities. For?
2 or 3 convincing points to get the fund or something like that.
From my side now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
To them, to the funding agency.
I would say that, so I'm not really, this is not a funding campaign, otherwise I would have made a slightly different kind of presentation. But yeah, I think because we have, I feel we have cracked the scaling part. So we feel that it's not possible for individuals to make, or even a single organization to make any difference. So if there are individuals or there are organizations which are interested to support conservation in the Eastern Himalayan particularly, even if they don't fund us, find individuals or organizations who are using similar models where they're working with the local indigenous communities, working to strengthen the values which have enabled them to conserve so much biodiversity till date, when our cities are really in a very bad shape. These are some of the places that they should look up to. And to be honest, these are our last hope. These kind of landscapes, this kind of socio-ecological systems that are still there is the last hope for humanity. Otherwise, if we just rely on our cities, we are doomed. Thanks everyone, and particularly for the very, very fruitful discussion. And thanks to IISc, thanks to Bitasta, the Department of Communication here, to allow me to come and share some of my work. Thank you so much.